Liam had been married to Clara for 12 years. For 12 years, he had built their life with the same slow precision he used to design bridges. Each day a carefully placed brick, each anniversary a load-bearing column. He believed in structure. He believed in the integrity of materials, in the slow, unglamorous work of making something that would last. Then he saw the address on their shared location app. A single pin dropped every Tuesday afternoon in a part of the city she had no reason to be in, a place of secluded wealth and high stone walls. She said it was yoga, an intensive class. The pin was not a yoga studio. What Liam did next would not be loud, or fast, or driven by rage. It would be a slow, methodical dismantling of a world he had thought was solid, a controlled demolition executed with the same quiet competence he had used to build it. We are all builders of our own lives. Tell us in the comments what city you're building in, and be sure to subscribe for more stories of quiet strength. Liam closed the app. He did not confront her. He did not raise his voice. He made dinner, as he always did on a Monday night. He felt the weight of the new information not as a hot shock, but as a cold, dense mass settling in his sternum, a flaw in the concrete he had not anticipated but now had to account for. His profession was the study of stress and strain, of how things hold together and how they break apart. He had spent his career calculating tolerances, predicting points of failure in steel and concrete. He had never applied those calculations to his own life. He had assumed the foundation was sound. That night, lying in the dark, he listened to the rhythm of Clara's breathing. It was the same rhythm he had heard for 4,380 nights. But tonight, it was the sound of a clock ticking in a room he had just discovered was wired to explode. He did not sleep. He lay still, his hands resting on his chest, feeling the slow, steady beat of his own heart. He cataloged the day. The morning coffee. The shared glance across the breakfast table. Her kiss at the door, a light, practiced gesture. The text she sent at lunch. All of it now felt like a performance, a carefully constructed facade. And he, the engineer, the man who prided himself on seeing the underlying structure of things, had mistaken the facade for the building itself. He thought about the pin on the map. 17, Elmstead Lane. He visualized it on a city grid. He knew the area. Winding roads, old trees, houses set back 100 yards from the street. It was a place designed for privacy, for disappearance. His mind began to work not with emotion, but with logistics. The problem was defined. A variable had been introduced that threatened the integrity of the entire system. He needed data. He needed to understand the nature and magnitude of the force being applied to his life. Rage was a wildfire. It consumed everything and left nothing. Grief was a flood. It overwhelmed and paralyzed. What he felt was neither. It was the cold, clear focus of a man standing before a failing structure, holding a blueprint, and knowing he had to understand exactly why it was failing before he could decide what to do next. He would not act on Tuesday. An action on Tuesday would be a reaction, and he did not react. He planned. He would go on Wednesday. The next day was Tuesday, the day of the pin. Liam went to work. He sat in his office, the air smelling of blueprints and brewed coffee. He reviewed stress reports for a new pedestrian bridge over the interstate. He focused on the calculations, the precise language of numbers that could not lie or dissemble. He found a flaw in a weld specification, a tiny point of vulnerability that could, over years of vibration and weather, become a catastrophic failure. He circled it in red pen. He made a note. He sent an email. His focus was total. He did not check his phone. He did not need to. He already knew what he would find. At 1:15 p.m., as it had the previous 3 Tuesdays, her pin would move from the downtown gallery where she worked as a curator, travel north, and settle at 17 Elmstead Lane. It would remain there until 4:45 p.m. exactly. The consistency was what chilled him most. It was not a spontaneous act. It was a routine. It was part of a schedule, a life lived in parallel. When he arrived home that evening, Clara was already there. She was in the kitchen, arranging flowers in a vase, the scent of lilies filling the air. She was humming. She looked radiant, flushed with a kind of energy he hadn't seen in months. "The class was amazing today," she said, not looking up from a difficult stem. "I finally managed a full crow pose." He stood in the doorway, his work bag heavy in his hand. He looked at her, at the curve of her neck, the line of her back as she leaned over the counter. He had helped her design this kitchen. He had chosen the soapstone for the counters, the warm, dark slate for the floor. He knew the precise dimensions of the room. He knew where every stud was in the walls. And he did not know the woman standing in the middle of it. "That's great," he said. His voice was level. It betrayed nothing. He walked past her and set his bag down. He watched his own hands as he opened the refrigerator. He took out a bottle of water. His movements were steady, economical. He was an observer in his own home. Later, she talked more about the yoga class. She described the instructor, a woman named Anya, whose voice was like warm honey. She described the other people in the class, their shared effort, the sense of community. She was a good storyteller. Her descriptions were rich with detail, specific and believable. She was building a world for him out of words. A fiction. He listened patiently. He nodded. He asked a question or two. He did not challenge her. He did not point out that the pin on the map was a 20-minute drive from the nearest yoga studio, named on her credit card statements. He simply gathered the data. Her confidence was its own kind of evidence. She was not nervous. She was not evasive. She performed her lie with an unsettling ease, as if she had rehearsed it to the point of absolute conviction. She believed he was a man who did not look closely, a man who saw the surface and was satisfied. For 12 years, his steadiness had been her comfort. Now, he understood, she saw it as his limitation. It was the foundational error in her design. Wednesday morning was overcast, the sky a flat, uniform gray that absorbed all light. Liam left for work at his usual time. He drove his nondescript sedan, a car chosen for its reliability, not its style. He sat in 2 meetings, his contributions as precise and valuable as always. He spoke about foundation settling and soil composition. He felt a grim irony in the words. At 10:45 a.m., he told his project manager he had a site inspection that would take him out of the office for the rest of the morning. It was not a lie. He was going to a site. He was going to conduct an inspection. He drove not north, but in the direction of his own home. He went to the small detached garage he had converted into a workshop. Inside, the air smelled of sawdust and machine oil. This was his sanctuary, a place of pure creation. He did not linger. He went to a locked steel cabinet and took out a pair of binoculars and a high-resolution digital camera with a telephoto lens. He placed them in a simple canvas bag. He drove north. He did not speed. He kept to the right lane. His heart rate was slightly elevated, but his hands were steady on the wheel. He was entering enemy territory, but he did so not as a soldier, but as a surveyor. His job was to map the terrain, to understand its features. The turnoff for Elmstead Lane was discreet, marked by 2 low stone pillars. The road was narrow, canopied by the dense branches of ancient oak trees. The houses were barely visible, set far back behind gates and long, winding driveways. It was a neighborhood built to repel observation. He passed number 17. He did not slow down. He registered the details in a single, sweeping glance. A modern design, all glass and cedar and dark gray stone. A stark contrast to the more traditional estates surrounding it. The driveway was long and paved with dark gravel that would crunch under tires, an audible alarm system. The gate was wrought iron, controlled by a keypad. He drove to the end of the lane, turned around in a small cul-de-sac, and drove back. He parked his car on an adjacent street, a public road that backed onto the wooded area behind the Elmstead properties. He got out of his car, the canvas bag over his shoulder. The air was cool and damp. He walked into the woods. The ground was soft with years of fallen leaves. It was quiet. He moved slowly, deliberately, using the trees for cover. He found a position on a slight rise that gave him a clear, if distant, view of the back of the house at 17 Elmstead Lane. He was approximately 200 yards away. He took out the binoculars. The back of the house was a wall of glass. A vast, open-plan living space. A stone patio. A dark, geometric swimming pool. It was empty. It felt cold, even from a distance. He raised the camera. He began to take pictures, not of the house itself, but of the context, the way it sat on the land, the lines of sight from the road, the neighboring properties. He was documenting the environment. He took a picture of a black Range Rover parked near the side of the house, partially obscured by a row of bamboo. He zoomed in on the license plate. He took a picture of the mailboxes at the end of the lane. He was not looking for a single, damning image. He was collecting data points. He was building a file. He stayed for an hour. Nothing moved. No one came or went. The house was a silent, empty stage. He felt the profound wrongness of the place. It was not a home. It was a destination. As he walked back to his car, he felt a strange sense of calm. The mystery was beginning to resolve into a problem that could be analyzed. The unknown was becoming known. He had the location. He had the time. He had the architecture of the betrayal. Now he just needed the name of the architect. Back in his car, the interior felt close and safe. He sat for a moment, the engine off. He looked at the digital display on his camera, scrolling through the images he had taken. The clean, cold lines of the house. The black vehicle. The license plate, crisp and clear. He drove not to his office, but to a small branch of the public library several miles away. He did not want to use his work computer. He did not want to use his home network. He was creating a firewall between his investigation and his life. The library was quiet, smelling of old paper and floor wax. He found an empty computer terminal in a corner. He sat down, the plastic of the keyboard cool beneath his fingers. He started with the simplest search. The license plate number. It was a vanity plate. JC3. The search returned a registration for a 2023 Range Rover, owned by a Julian Croft. The address listed for the registration was a post office box in the city's financial district. Liam opened a new tab. He searched for the address, 17 Elmstead Lane. Property records were public information. The results came back in seconds. The property was owned by a holding company, Elmstead Properties LLC. He clicked on the link for the LLC's public filings. The registered agent was a law firm known for handling the affairs of the city's wealthiest residents. But the principal officer listed was Julian Croft. The two names connected. The car was his. The house was his. Now he searched the name itself. Julian Croft. The first several results were for a man who was a prominent figure in the city's art scene. The owner and director of the Croft Gallery, a high-end contemporary art space downtown. Liam felt a cold, heavy certainty settle in his gut. The Croft Gallery. It was where Clara worked. It was where she had been for the last 6 years. Julian Croft was her boss. He stared at the screen, at the picture of the man that accompanied a magazine profile. He was handsome, in a way that seemed both effortless and expensive. Silvering hair, a confident smile. Pictured on his arm, at a gallery opening, was his wife. The article was 2 years old. Liam kept digging. He looked for the intersection of Julian Croft and Clara. He found photos from gallery events. Clara, standing slightly behind Julian, smiling at a potential buyer. Julian, his hand resting briefly on the small of her back. Small gestures that, viewed in isolation, meant nothing. But viewed in the context of 17 Elmstead Lane, they were a confession. He had always known Julian Croft as a name. Clara's boss. A man she spoke of with a mixture of professional respect and mild irritation. She would describe his demands, his perfectionism, his mercurial moods. She had painted a portrait of a difficult but brilliant employer. Not once had she hinted at anything more. The performance was more elaborate than he had imagined. It was not just the yoga class. It was her entire professional life, presented to him as a carefully edited narrative. He thought about their finances. They kept their main accounts separate, a modern arrangement they had both agreed to years ago. They had one joint account for household expenses. He paid the mortgage. She paid for utilities and groceries. Her salary, she had always said, was modest. The art world was not lucrative, not at her level. Most of it went to her own expenses. Her car, her clothes, her lunches. He had never questioned it. He had trusted her. He opened another tab. He logged into the website for their joint credit card. He scrolled through months of transactions. Utilities, gas, groceries. And then he saw it. A recurring monthly charge, listed under a generic corporate name. Artisan Consulting, $2,500. Every month for the last 14 months. He did a quick search on the consulting firm. It was another LLC, registered to the same law firm as the one that owned the house. He felt the floor drop out from beneath him. This was not just an affair. It was financial. It was structured. This was a conspiracy. He closed the browser windows, one by one. He logged out of the library computer. He methodically cleared the history. He stood up, his legs stiff. He walked out of the library into the gray afternoon. The world looked different. The buildings seemed less solid. The people passing him on the street were strangers in a way they hadn't been an hour ago. He had spent his life believing in verifiable facts. in the integrity of a straight line. His wife's life was a web of calculated falsehoods. He drove home. He had more than enough to confront her. But a confrontation was not the goal. A confrontation was an emotional release. He was not interested in emotion. He was interested in a resolution. And for that, he needed more. He needed the complete blueprint of her betrayal. That evening, Liam sat on the edge of his bed, the house quiet. Clara was out, attending a donor reception at the gallery, an official work event. He had been invited but had declined, citing a project deadline. A small, simple lie of his own. It felt foreign and sharp in his mouth. He looked at his phone, then put it down. He walked to his home office. He sat in the dark for a long time, the only light coming from the street lamp outside his window, casting long shadows across the room. He performed the inventory, the mental cataloging he did on a job site when a critical failure was discovered. What he knew. He knew about 17 Elmstead Lane. He knew it belonged to Julian Croft, Clara's boss. He knew she went there every Tuesday. He knew about the $2,500 monthly payment from their joint account to a shell corporation linked to Croft. He knew the yoga story was a lie. He knew the narrative she had constructed about her professional life was a lie. What he did not know. He did not know the full extent of the financial entanglement. The $2,500 a month felt like a piece of a larger puzzle. A lease? A payment for something? It was too consistent, too clean. He did not know the endgame. What was their plan? Was she planning to leave him? Was this a long-term strategy to siphon assets before a divorce? Or was it something else? The coldness of the architecture, both of the house and of the lie, suggested this was not about passion. Passion is messy. This was methodical. He thought about his own assets. The house they lived in his name, the mortgage almost paid off, his retirement accounts, built with steady contributions for 2 decades, his workshop, the tools and machinery inside it. He had built this life slowly, piece by piece. He now saw it not as a home, but as a collection of assets that were suddenly vulnerable. The violation was not just emotional. It was structural. It was an attack on the very framework of his existence. He picked up the phone. He scrolled through his contacts, past colleagues and contractors, to a single name, Sean, his younger brother. Sean was a network security analyst for a major tech firm. He lived 3 states away, but they spoke every Sunday, a ritual as fixed as Liam's morning coffee. He answered on the second ring. Hey. Sean's voice was warm, familiar. Everything okay? It's not Sunday. Everything is fine, Liam said, his voice even. I have a technical question for you. A hypothetical. He did not preface it with emotion. He did not ask for help. He presented it as a problem to be solved. I need to understand how someone might move money between a small business, like an art gallery, and a private party, without creating an obvious trail. Think shell companies, inflated invoices, that sort of thing. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Sean was smart. He knew Liam did not deal in hypotheticals of this nature. Is this about a project? Sean asked, a careful probe. A client. It's research, Liam said. I'm looking at the structural integrity of a system. It was the truest thing he could say. Sean did not press. He accepted the premise. Okay, he said, and Liam could hear the faint click of a keyboard in the background. The classic way is through vendor fraud. You set up a fake vendor, a consulting company, for instance. The gallery pays the vendor for services never rendered. The vendor company is owned by the person you want to get the money to. Or you could do it through inventory. Overpay for a piece of art from a friendly artist, who then kicks back the difference. Or you could undervalue a sale to a friendly buyer, who makes up the difference in cash. It depends how sophisticated they are. Liam listened, the information slotting into place. Artisan Consulting, he said, the name of the company from the credit card statement. If I gave you a name like that, could you find out who owns it, and if it has any legitimate business activity? Depends on how it's set up, Sean said. But probably. Give me what you have. Liam gave him the name of the LLC and the name Julian Croft. He did not mention Clara. He did not need to. He was isolating variables. I'll look into it, Sean said. His tone was now serious. He knew this was not a hypothetical. I'll call you when I have something. They ended the call without pleasantries. The information had been transferred. The task was in motion. Liam hung up. He now had an ally, a trusted component in his network. He was not alone in the dark. For the next week, Liam moved through his life as if nothing had changed. He went to work. He came home. He had dinner with Clara. He listened to her stories about the gallery, about the eccentric artists and the wealthy, demanding clients. He listened for the name Julian Croft. She used it sparingly, always in a professional context. Julian is being impossible about the lighting for the new exhibit. Julian landed the Henderson estate. It's a huge win for us. Her performance was flawless. She was calm, confident, inhabiting her role as the slightly put-upon but dedicated curator. The dramatic irony was a constant, heavy presence in every room they shared. He knew he was watching a play, and he was the only member of the audience who knew the actors were lying. He felt a profound sense of detachment, as if he were observing his own life from a great distance. The man making coffee, the man reading the newspaper, the man nodding as his wife spoke, they all felt like a character he was playing. The real Liam was somewhere else, in a quiet, cold room, analyzing data and waiting. On Tuesday, he did not check the location app. He knew where she was. The knowledge was a solid object inside him. While she was at 17, Elmstead Lane, he was at his desk, signing off on the final plans for a downtown high-rise. He thought about the immense, invisible forces the building would have to withstand. Wind shear, seismic shifts, the simple, relentless pull of gravity. All accounted for, all managed by the integrity of the design. The human element was so much harder to predict. On Thursday night, Sean called. "I have something," he said, his voice flat, all business. Artisan Consulting is a shell. No website, no business filings beyond the initial registration. It's registered to the same law firm as Croft's other holdings. But the bank account associated with it is where it gets interesting. Liam waited. The account for Artisan Consulting receives one deposit a month from your joint credit card. That's the only money coming in. But money goes out. A lot of it. For the last year, that account has been making lease payments on a BMW 7 Series. Registered to Clara, Liam felt the air leave his lungs in a slow, silent rush. A car. She had her own car, a sensible SUV he had helped her pick out. He had never seen her in a BMW. "Where's the car?" Liam asked. "It's not at the house. GPS data from the leasing company's service records puts it at a private garage downtown most of the time," Sean said. "But on Tuesdays, it's at 17, Elmstead Lane, of course. A different car for a different life. A life he was subsidizing." "There's more," Sean said. "The gallery's finances. It's a private company, so it's hard to get a clear picture. But I found their art transport and logistics vendor. The invoices are public in a few legal filings. They seem inflated. About 20% higher than industry standard for the jobs listed, a kickback scheme," Liam said, the words tasting like ash. "Looks like it," Sean said. "Croft overpays the vendor. The vendor kicks back the difference in cash or to an offshore account. It's clean, hard to trace, and Clara? She signs off on the invoices," Sean said. "Her signature is on every transport manifest for the last 18 months. She's not just a party to it. She's a necessary component. She's the one verifying the work was done." Liam closed his eyes. The scope of it was breathtaking. It was not a simple affair. It was a criminal enterprise. A long-term plan to defraud the gallery, with his wife as a key operational partner. The house, the car, the secret life, it was all funded by fraud. And the $2,500 from their joint account was her contribution, her investment in her own betrayal. "Liam," Sean's voice softened for the first time. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to call a lawyer," Liam said. That night, at 11:30 p.m., he made the call. Anya Sharma had been his family's lawyer for 30 years. She had handled his parents' estate. She was sharp, pragmatic, and did not take calls this late unless it was a matter of gravity. "Anya," he said when she answered. "It's Liam. I have a structural problem." Anya Sharma listened without interruption for 20 minutes. Liam laid out the facts with the same dispassionate precision he would use to describe a structural fault in a bridge. He spoke of the location pin, the house on Elmstead Lane, the owner, Julian Croft. He detailed the shell company, the lease on the second car, the inflated invoices his brother had uncovered. He did not use the word affair. He did not speak of heartbreak. He spoke of undisclosed assets, fraudulent conveyances, and conspiracy. He presented it as a case study in systematic deception. When he was finished, the line was silent for a long moment. "Liam," Anya said finally, her voice calm and measured. "First, you will do nothing. You will not speak to her. You will not let her know that you know. Your composure is your most valuable asset right now. Do you understand? I understand, he said. Good. Second, your brother has been looking at things he shouldn't be. Tell him to stop and to send everything he found to me through a secure channel I will provide. From this point forward, all investigation is handled by my office. We will do this by the book. Okay. Third, she continued, we need to protect your assets. Tomorrow, I will file a lease pendens on your home, which will prevent her from attempting to place a lien on it or force a sale. We will also freeze the joint accounts. You need to open a new account at a different bank immediately. We will sever the financial ties. Quietly, what is the strategy? Liam asked. The strategy, Anya said, is to make this a financial case, not a domestic one. Her infidelity is emotionally devastating, but in court, it's largely irrelevant. Her participation in criminal fraud, however, is highly relevant. It gives us leverage. We are not going to have a messy divorce, Liam. We are going to have a surgical extraction. We will present her with a settlement agreement that she will have no choice but to sign. An agreement that recognizes her fraudulent behavior and protects your assets accordingly. He felt a sense of relief, so profound it was almost painful. He had a plan. He had a professional on his side. He was no longer just a husband who had been betrayed. He was a client with a case. What do you need from me? He asked. I need you to continue to be exactly who you have been, Anya said. Go to work. Come home. Be steady. Be observant. I need you to print out every document you have. The location history, the property records, the credit card statements. I will have a forensic accountant go through the gallery's books, but your initial documentation is critical. Put it all in a binder. We will build our case on a foundation of irrefutable fact. Liam spent the weekend in his workshop. With the door locked, he printed the documents. Each page that emerged from the printer was a piece of his new reality. The map with the pin at 17 Elmstead Lane. The photo of the black Range Rover. The deed held by the LLC. The bank statements showing the payments to Artisan Consulting. The vehicle registration for the BMW in Clara's name. He placed each one in a clear plastic sleeve. He arranged them chronologically in a heavy 3-ring binder. The binder was black. It felt dense, final. It was a blueprint of the demolition to come. On Sunday evening, Clara came home from a weekend trip she'd said was for a women's wellness retreat. She seemed relaxed, happy. She brought him a small, smooth stone she'd found on a hike. To remind you to stay grounded, she said, placing it on his desk. He looked at the stone. He looked at her. The distance between the man she thought he was and the man he had become was now a vast, unbridgeable canyon. He picked up the stone. It was cool and solid in his hand. Thank you, he said. The confrontation was not a confrontation. It was a meeting. Liam scheduled it for a Wednesday evening, 2 weeks after his call with Anya. He chose the dining room. The table was a solid oak piece he had built himself in his first year of marriage. He had always loved its sturdiness, the way it anchored the room. Tonight, it would serve as a courtroom. He asked Clara to sit down. He said he had some financial matters to discuss. His tone was neutral, matter of fact. She seemed unconcerned, perhaps a little bored. She sat opposite him, scrolling through her phone. What's this about? She asked, her attention still on the screen. He did not answer. He placed the black binder on the table between them. The sound of it landing on the wood was quiet, but final. She looked up, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. Liam, I'm busy. What is this? He opened the binder. The first page was a printout from their location-sharing app. It showed the map of the city. It showed her icon at 17 Elmstead Lane. It showed the date, Tuesday, 6 weeks prior. He said nothing. He simply turned the binder so she could see it. She glanced at it. Her expression did not change. It's a glitch in the app, she said, her voice smooth. It does that sometimes. Puts me in the wrong place. She was a quick and confident liar. He turned the page. It was another printout. And another. A calendar view, showing every Tuesday for the last 3 months. Every Tuesday, the same pin. 17 Elmstead Lane. Her composure wavered, just for a second. A tightening around her mouth. My yoga class is near there, she said. The GPS signal must be weak in that area. He turned the page again. A photograph of the house at 17 Elmstead Lane. The modern facade of glass and cedar. This is the house, he said. It was the first full sentence he had spoken. Her eyes widened slightly. She stared at the picture. I don't know what that is, she said, but the denial was weaker now. a tremor in her voice. He turned the page. The property record. Elmstead Properties, LLC. Principal Officer, Julian Croft. Her breath caught. It was a small, sharp sound. The color began to drain from her face. She was finally understanding that this was not an accusation based on suspicion. This was a presentation of fact. Julian owns a lot of properties, she said, attempting to rally. It's an investment. He turned the page. The credit card statement. The charge for $2,500 to Artisan Consulting, circled in red. He turned the page again. The LLC filing for Artisan Consulting, showing it was another of Croft's shell companies. What is this, Liam? She asked, her voice rising. Are you spying on me? I am reviewing our finances, he said calmly. He turned the page. The vehicle lease agreement from BMW Financial Services. For a 7 Series sedan. In her name. Paid for by Artisan Consulting. Her face was now pale, her expression a mixture of fear and fury. That's a company car, she hissed. It's a benefit of my position. He did not respond. He simply turned the last page. It was a copy of a transport manifest from the Croft Gallery. An invoice for shipping services far above market rate. At the bottom, in the space for approval, was her signature. Clear, unmistakable. She stared at her own name on the page. There were no more explanations. There were no more lies she could construct. The structure of her deception had been laid bare, every fraudulent beam and joist exposed. She looked at him then, truly looked at him. And in her eyes, he saw the dawning, terrifying realization. She had not misjudged his love. She had misjudged his competence. You, she whispered. The word was filled with a venomous disbelief. Her phone, which had been lying on the table, buzzed. The screen lit up. A text from Julian.